Hi, I'm Michael. Welcome to Spooky2 Q&A Live, Episode 2. Spooky2 Q&A Live is a program that answers your question every week about Spooky2 software, hardware, Rife, frequency research, alternative health methods, and other topics you are interested in. During each episode, I will first spend some time talking about news happened in previous week, keeping our lovely users updated from what's happening. After that, we will answer some questions that have been pre-collected from our users regarding to a specific topic. And we will answer some of the questions selected online. This week, our topic is Spooky2 Sample Digitizer, and I have been inviting John to come here, answer questions. Welcome, John. Thank you for coming.
That's all right. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here.
Okay. What's new last week? Nothing new, really.
Say about the marathon that you ran.
Oh, okay. 5 people in our office ran a marathon last Sunday. That's actually not a real marathon. That's a baby marathon.
It was a bit embarrassing, really,
yeah,
wasn't it?
It is a little embarrassing because John and we have been attending other competitions, like 50 kilometers competition in desert, or running to one of the highest mountains in China, and then get back to the bottom. So we are actually very strong in competition. I got the second place in the desert competitions.
Let's give her a round.
So we felt a little bit embarrassing about this baby marathon because the girl who got us in the baby marathon didn't know how strong we are. Right before actually something very interesting happened. Right before the marathon, I felt that my shoes were very tight, so I decided that I can run without the socks. So I took off my socks and gave them to John, and I told him that you can just run because I know he's very competitive. He has to run very fast. So I said to him, there's no need to wait for me. And he did it. Probably 1 minute after it started, he disappeared. And after about 2 kilometers, I felt that my feet were hurting a lot. It's like there's a knife cutting my toes every step I took. So I was thinking, well, maybe it should be okay. I can just run like this. But turns out I couldn't run. I took off my shoes and ran barefoot. It was really cold, so I had to stop. Then I went to a stranger, a boy, a little boy. I told him, hey, I need your socks because I can't run anymore. That boy was, I think he was very scared. So he took off his socks and gave them to me.
You never hear about this in a marathon, do you?
Yeah. So with that socks, I finished the baby marathon, but my toes still hurt a lot, and I used some bandages. So what if you get hurt in some sports? What would you do?
Good question.
I would, well, for me personally, I would do some massage. If you have some essential oils, you can use some essential oil while you do the massage, or you can do some hot foot bath. In China, we say that it helps with the blood flow. Or if you can get access, you have access to the sauna. You can do the sauna because it helps get rid of what is the acid that builds up?
Lactic acid.
Lactic acid that builds up while you do the sports. So this using this way, your sore will get away very soon. Okay, the new thing. And you know that in China there's 24 lunar terms. Chinese ancient, our ancestors use that for agriculture. They it helps them decide when to plant and when to harvest. And also our Chinese traditional medicine doctors, they use that for healthcare. Yesterday was the start of winter. That's one of the 24 solar terms. It said that the first 3 days of this lunar term, if you do masturbation and acupuncture, it will help balance the yin and yang in our body, and also will help raise blood and qi. Which is very important in Chinese traditional medicine. And it will also help unblock the meridians. So if you do the that's the masturbation I was talking about. If you do that around your meridian, it will help unblock the meridian.
So where do you put this?
Because I want to warm up my tummies, so I would tie it around my tummy.
All right.
But if someone has a problem with their knees, they can tie it around their knees. Any part that you feel, sometimes you feel cold. So any part you feel cold, you feel uncomfortable, you can tie it around that part. It will help unblock the meridians and help the qi flow and the blood and qi.
And so inside each of these little pockets, there I can count 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. There's one of these. If you want to explain what that is.
Oh, that is a kind of, you can see that this is a kind of a plant. We can buy this kind of plant from from the shopping mall, and we put it here. You can see there's a pin here. We can put this in the pin, and then we burn it. We burn it and we put it here. There will not be fire, but only smoke. So we close this, and you can see that there are holes, so the smoke would come out, and then you put it into this.
Does it get warm?
Oh, very warm. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, very warm. And last night when I took this off, my tummy was sweating a lot, and I felt very comfortable. Feels that my tummy is warming up, because I always felt cold in my tummy. That's why I put it there.
Okay.
Yeah. So I know that Chinese traditional medicine is not very popular in Western countries, but if you have Chinese traditional medicine doctors close to you, you can go to them, because the first 3 days will be the best timing for you to do these two, this masturbation and also acupuncture. Yeah, I know it's very it's suffering to do the acupuncture. Okay, that's the new stuff. And the next part will be the questions and answers about Spooky2 Sample Digitizer. I will ask the questions, and John will answer the questions. Are you ready?
I guess so.
Okay. And now we are asking some pre-collected questions about Sample Digitizer that have been most asked in Facebook. Okay, John, so what is the biofeedback scan?
Biofeedback is a way of listening to your body. Your body is trying to tell you something. And it's a way of listening to what your body is saying. It's like when you go to a doctor and the doctor puts his stethoscope on your chest. Your doctor's listening to your body, listening to your heartbeat, and trying to determine if there's anything wrong with your heartbeat. What he hears here is a reflection of what's occurring throughout your whole body. And so biofeedback really is like listening to your body. Now, how Spooky applies biofeedback is Spooky applies a frequency sweep to your body. And while that sweep is being applied, Spooky's also listening. He's got the stethoscope on your chest, and he's listening to what your body's saying in response to these frequencies. And if there's any frequencies that make your body go, oh, Spooky will find that, and Spooky will report that frequency back again.
Okay, so how can biofeedback scan help with the frequency treatment?
Well, there's actually 3 ways which biofeedback can help treatments. The first thing is the correct frequencies can be found. Quite often you can have an ailment and you're not really sure which program to run. So when you run a biofeedback, Spooky tells you which frequencies are most appropriate for your body at that time. So that's the first way. The other way is Spooky can take an existing program and use that program in a biofeedback scan to find more accurate frequencies. And so the database program may have 9,000 hertz as a frequency, but after a biofeedback, you might discover that it's 9,001 hertz, which is the frequency for you. And so it increases the accuracy of the programs. And the other way is that you can determine which frequencies are actually appropriate for your body. You may find that you load in a lot of programs to sort out some issues with your body, but maybe only 10% of them are actually good for you. The rest are just surplus to requirements. And so you can run a biofeedback scan using those frequencies, and Spooky will tell you which ones gave the strongest response, which frequencies gave the weakest response.
Sounds pretty good. Because our topic today is Sample Digitizer Scan. So what is the Sample Digitizer Scan, and how did you get this idea?
Well, it's a bit of an interesting story. Well, it's interesting for me. Well, maybe it's not interesting at all. But as with all things, it actually started from an accident. I'd come down with a cold. It wasn't anything serious. I had a runny nose, and that was about it. But now, with my technical training, my mind's always thinking about ideas. And I had my runny nose, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be good if we could use a tissue sample for biofeedback? Now, with my background in formal training, I know about devices that do this, but they do this on electronic devices, not on people. And I thought, well, why isn't it done on people? And I guess the answer was that it's the money, people are chasing the money, and the money is in consumer electronics. But I thought there's no reason why biological tissue can't be used as a direct sample. And so with my runny nose, I got some nose discharge. I won't go into too much detail here, but it was awful. It was bad. It was bad. It was green. It was, actually it wasn't green, but that's not important right now, but it was yuck. But I got it. And I found a couple of blank printed circuit boards. These are boards with copper on 1 or 2 sides, and these had copper on both sides. But I put on top of one printed circuit board my nasal discharge and put the other printed circuit board on top. So I made a beautiful, yummy sandwich. And then I connected wires to the boards, and I connected these wires to the output number 1 of generator X. I wanted to see what the frequency response was of my nasal discharge. I had a bit of time on my hands, okay? And so I found that there was definitely a response curve and spikes, which showed that at some frequencies the response changed. I made a note of those frequencies because I hadn't developed the biofeedback enough to do it automatically. And I ran the program. And without a word of a lie, within about half an hour, I felt pretty much 100%. I shouldn't stop the story here because the next day the cold moved to my chest and it got worse. so we'll stop the story there. I didn't bother testing and doing the doing the phlegm that was then coming up from my throat because I was so excited with my discovery. I was doing this and doing thinking and designing, and so I let the cold progress a little bit. So it's my silly fault. But that's really how it all started, me discovering that there was actually a science behind it. What I was doing was using my nasal discharge to form a capacitor. A capacitor is in electronics where two conductive plates are separated by an insulator. And the insulator was my nose stuff. And the characteristics of a capacitor are largely through the characteristics of its dielectric. And so that's the scientific explanation for those, the electronic people that are watching now. It's forming a grid dip oscillator circuit. And so there is a science behind it. It's just that people haven't taken advantage of it yet. But Spooky has. And so now I've got a way of taking any sample and knowing what the response is of that sample.
Okay, so there are some other kinds of biofeedback scan in Spooky2. Why did you choose to use this way? And what do you think the advantages of a sample digitizer scan?
Well, the first one is speed. Gosh, even doing biofeedbacks now with Digitizer each time, I'm surprised how fast we've managed to make it. Because the digitizer doesn't have to wait for the frequency to be applied and then listen for the response. What this digitizer does is send the frequency and immediately know what the response is. There's no delay. And so a scan which used to take an hour now takes minutes, 6.5 minutes or so. So the most obvious advantage is speed. But there's an even bigger advantage to that, because when you're sick, secondary to speed is accuracy. And the resolution of the biofeedbacks can be greater because it's faster. So frequency steps can be smaller. We can also have more samples for each frequency step and average them out. And so the accuracy is truly more accurate. And the other good thing about Spooky Digitizer is you can focus on one small area rather than doing a whole body scan like Spooky Pulse. You're doing a scan on one little sample. It can be the TENS pads almost touching on a part of your body, or it can be a sample of your saliva or nasal discharge or even blood. It's focusing the attention of Generator X and all the biofeedback electronic wizardry onto one little sample to determine the electrical characteristics of that sample. And from the results, you can then run the program that it creates. And so it's got these advantages which make it quite fantastic, really. Biofeedbacks before Digitizer were just so slow. They were painful. I'm not shy to say it. I find it so hard to sit still for any period of time. A minute's hard for me, and so to sit down for a quick pulse biofeedback, which is half an hour, really half an hour of doing nothing, thinking of nothing, just relaxing. That's incredible. It's just not really feasible. And so almost without fail, after doing a Spooky Pulse biofeedback scan, I'll be getting spikes as my mind wanders and I think, oh, that's a good idea, or I think of something else, and it sort of invokes a biological response because my idea is provoking excitement, and then and then there's a little bit of a peak, and then Spooky thinks, right, that was where a virus is, where the peak is, but it's not. It's just where an idea was. And so, you know, when I'm doing meditation now, so maybe except for last night, we didn't do it last night, but maybe I'll be able to sit down for longer periods of time better. But Spooky Digitizer just makes it so much easier, better, more fun. And you can see the graph spinning along and all these spikes happening as it goes along. It really is fun now. It's much better.
So when you say that it is faster, when you talk about the speed, it is the speed of response, or it is taking shorter than before?
Well, it's both really. With Spooky Pulse, Spooky would apply a frequency, but then Spooky would have to wait for your next heartbeat because it's determining the time between heartbeats to say whether the frequency is good or not. So each frequency step takes over a second. But now it takes milliseconds between each frequency. There's no pause. It just goes zing all the way through. Because it's not looking for a response. It's looking at the waveform and as it changes. So it looks at the amount of electrons that are passing through your body for each particular frequency. And it's looking also at the phase angle, which is the relationship between the electron flow and the voltage. All technical stuff, but it just works.
Okay, what kind of samples can be used?
Well, that's a good question. Now, because Spooky Digitizer functions much like a capacitor, those plates need to be touching or almost touching. So you can't use something like whole nails. Maybe you can use nail filings, what you get after you use a nail file, for the guys who are listening. That'll be quite good to use, I guess, because that sample would last a long time. But I'm not sure whether that'd be such a good thing to use because it won't actually contain any of the pathogens. Even better than that would be something like blood. If it's something that's if you've got a problem in your whole body, that will be reflected in your blood, and so a blood sample would be good. Or if you're doing a John White and you've got yourself a head cold, you can use some nose discharge, or sore throat, you can use some saliva perhaps, or cough up some of the yucky stuff and use that for these as a biological sample. Really, what's closest to the problem that you have at that time, you use. And so if it's a sore throat, you use some sort of sample from your throat. So that's that. And you can also use your urine. A lot of people use urine as a sample. All those things are good, preferably something liquid. If it is a powder or something, just make sure the plates are close together. They've got to be virtually touching.
Okay. Under what conditions or what kind of problems you would want to use urine?
Urine problems, if you've got a urinary tract infection, a candida growth infection, that sort of thing, you'd use urine. If you find, or you're a little bit queasy with taking a blood sample, then urine is a good second option for that, because urine, when you go to the doctors, they give you a urine sample. They don't ask for a urine sample for fun. Well, they probably do, but that's for another. We'll discuss that another time. But but the urine sample truly reflects a lot of what's happening inside your body, and so a urine sample is good.
So you're saying that it's actually very important what sample to take. It depends on what you want to find in your body.
That's right.
Problems you have.
That's right. When you try looking for Rome, you don't look, some other country. You go to Italy, you go to Rome, and so you go to as close as possible to where the problem or the known problem area is. If you're feeling just generally low and you feel that you have got a general pathogen burden in your body, then you'd want to go to something general like the urine or the blood. But if it's something specific, then you try and go to that area and you do that. If you're unfortunate enough to have a cancer and you have a cancer in a certain area, and let's say you've got a cancer, like a breast cancer, that's going to be, you can take a blood sample, but you could also use TENS pads very, very close to the cancer site. Now, the signals will be passing through the cancerous tissue, also through healthy tissue, but more through the unhealthy tissue. And so the response that the biofeedback will give will be mostly for the tissue that you're trying to sample. But certainly for the digitizer, you want to have as good a sample as possible in there.
Okay. So how much is needed? How much sample is needed to put into the slides?
Sure. You don't need very much, Echo. You just need enough really to smear over the black E that's in the center of the digitizer. Try not to get it over the edges, because the edges of the slides are actually absorbent, and you don't want anything to be absorbed by those slides.
Okay. You know, we have two generators, Generator X and XM generator. Can Sample Digitizer only be used with Generator X?
Unfortunately, yes. We would have liked to have had our XM generator also able to do biofeedback scans using Sample Digitizer, but it hasn't got the whiz-bang circuitry to measure the waves that are passing through your body or passing through the digitizer. And it can't measure the result of the frequencies. So it's a bit of a shame. It would have been fantastic if it could, but unfortunately it can't.
Okay. What about boost? You know, in Spooky Boost, there is also output 1 and output 2 that mirrors the output 1 and 2 on the generator. While doing Sample Digitizer Scan, can we directly connect the digitizer with to the boost, or do we need to connect with the generator itself?
We haven't got a boost.
We
do have a boost. I'll just get a boost on one side, so I can show our users.
Let me do it.
No, I've got it.
Okay.
It's a guy thing. I'll do it even if it kills me. Okay, this is our Spooky boost for people that are new to Spooky. This connects directly onto the output of the generator. So this is our generator X. Our generator X there. And it just connects directly onto the output of the generator. Now there is a port which is directly for output number 1 and output number 2, but don't use it for Spooky Digitizer. I'll explain why just in a moment. Spooky Digitizer must connect onto output number 1 directly, neither generator number 1 or generator number 2. Both of those generators have a biofeedback facility, but only on output number 1. Now, if you use the boost and then connect to output number 1 from the boost, the wiring inside the Spooky boost itself will add something to the signal. And this is what you don't want. You want to have as pure a signal as possible. Don't use the amplified output from the boost either, because then it introduces output number 2 signal to the output number 1 signal. And again, the signal will be changed. It's best to not use this beautiful little thing at all. Just go straight, nice and simple, straight onto the output number 1 on either of generator 1 or generator number 2.
Okay, so there are two generators in generator X. If both me and you are not feeling very well and we both want to do Sample Digitizer Scan, can we use the same generator and doing the scan at the same time?
Yeah, that would be good, wouldn't it? But unfortunately, no. When Spooky is doing a biofeedback, all of Spooky's attention is on the biofeedback. It is very computer intensive. It takes a lot of work for Spooky to do all the maths, all the processing, all the tricky stuff in the background, all the things that we don't see. And so it's not possible to do 2 biofeedbacks at the same time. But it would have been good, but unfortunately, no.
Okay. There are 4 presets in Spooky2 software. That is a 1.5 hour preset, a 1 hour preset, a 4.5 hour preset, hunt and kill, scan and run. These 4 presets. Why do you put 4 presets in there, and when do you run which one?
We started off with just 1 preset echo, and then it's sort of grown a little bit from there. The original one was the 1 hour preset, and that's good for pretty much everything. But as always happens, time goes by and you think, ooh, because Sample Digitizer is so convenient, and you don't have to sit down on a chair while you're doing a biofeedback, you can just walk away and leave it. Why not make an extra long biofeedback? One which, instead of doing frequency steps of this much, do frequency steps of this much, like really fine steps, so we get every single nook and cranny. So we developed the one that lasts 4.5 hours. And so that's the background behind the two different times. The other two biofeedbacks are both experimental, but they're kind of cool, really, because they're kind of interactive. Both of them can perform a biofeedback scan using Sample Digitizer, or even contact mode. You can still use it in contact mode. And after a scan, it then automatically applies those frequencies. Yeah, that's pretty cool, isn't it? It's so you can do it by feedback, and then immediately after it's finished, you don't have to look at the frequencies, save it to a file, then load the file, and then run it. You can just set it to run and start it, and it does a scan, and then runs those programs, and does another scan, and runs those programs. Or you can just do it just once. You can choose how many times you do the scans, and also how the biofeedback scan takes place. And this is the difference between the two. The first one does a scan, then it runs those frequencies, and then it does another scan from the very beginning. And this is what do I call this one? That's the scan and run preset. The other one is the hunt and kill preset. This one came after the scan and run. And this one is a little bit more refined again. And you must be wondering, how can you get better than that? But we managed to. The hunt and kill one does a scan, automatically runs these frequencies. After it's run those frequencies, it does a refined scan of the first scan. And so when you do whenever you run a program, the pathogens try and hide. And so if you're running, for example, 10,000 hertz, all the bugs that are at 10,000 hertz will die, but there'll be bugs slightly either side that will only multiply. And so they're running to one side, trying to hide away from these frequencies. What this hunt and kill preset does, it looks and finds where the pathogens have hidden, where they run to, and it hammers them again. And so the second preset will chase them and find them wherever they go, and then apply the program to kill them, and then look again and find where there's any other remaining pathogens, and then kill them as well. And so that's the hunt and kill one, which is one of my favorites. And so you can actually leave them running overnight if you like. If you decide to do it in contact mode, you can run either of those two presets overnight. And what you're doing is you're combining a biofeedback with a treatment program, but instead of having an expert looking at the results, writing a program, and then loading the program and then running it, you're letting Spooky do all the work. And you can, of course, use it with Spooky Digitizer, because Spooky Digitizer can actually function as a Spooky remote, but it may not be it isn't as good as a Spooky remote. But it's similar to a very early Spooky remote, which has got simple, metal plates that go together, hasn't got any magnet, and hasn't got any other of the design features of Spooky remote. But it's better than nothing.
Okay. So my understanding is the first two, 1 hour and 4.5 hours, since I do not have to be wired to the machine, I can choose the 4.5 hours because it's more accurate.
That's right.
And the other two, I'm not sure whether my assumption is right, but I'm assuming that the sample digitizer, when it functions as a remote, it's treating what's found in the sample, not in the full body. I'm not sure, but you may have your idea. But in this case, I may want to run the second one, the hunt and the kill. Right?
The hunt and kill, that's right. That's right, because DNA entanglement is a two-way street. As well as Spooky remote being able to send information to the cells in your body, it can also reflect changes that are taking place in your body. And so the sample that you have in Digitizer, as well as being able to be used as transmission, it can also reflect the results of the program that is subsequently run. But the good thing about these other two presets it covers, you can set another output to apply those frequencies. And so Spooky Digitizer makes a lousy remote, but a Spooky remote makes a fantastic remote. And so what you do is you run the scan on the Spooky Digitizer and run the results on Spooky remote on a different generator or a different output number on generator X. And then you go back and run the biofeedback again. And so it's the best of both worlds. You can run the best biofeedback system and then apply those frequencies using the best transmission method. So that's kind of cool as well.
Now I think Generator X is really fantastic to have two generators because you...
Yeah, well, that's right. You know, when you're first designing Generator X, we thought, well, we'll have two generators of one because while we're running a program, the second generator can run a detox. And so you only need one generator for both, you know, running both simultaneously. And so it's really a very pleasant accident that we've now developed a way of utilizing the second generator on Generator X by running the results of an automated biofeedback. And of course, when we first were developing Generator X, we had no idea that we'd be taking it this far. So it's all pretty exciting.
Okay, you know, for me personally, I would not clean the slide. It would be your job. So how do you clean the slides?
Well, it's important not to make the sides of the sides of the slide wet because they do absorb moisture. And so I very carefully, using acetyl alcohol or maybe even any other types of alcohol, maybe even methylated spirits, I remove the biological tissue and then go over it again with some alcohol because the alcohol kills a burst cell structure. So it helps, you know, it's a good way of cleaning it. And also it evaporates quickly. It dries quickly. And so I generally use alcohol. If I don't use alcohol, I use a damp cloth. I put a bit of soap on the cloth, a tiny bit of liquid soap, tiny bit. I rub it and then I wipe it dry, and then I use damp tissue to wipe it again, being very careful at all stages to ensure that moisture doesn't go to the edges of the slide. You mustn't immerse the slides in water, which means not putting them through the dishwasher. Sorry, folks. It's a no-no. If you do that once, you cannot use them again. If the slides get moisture in them, it changes the characteristics of the slide, the electrical characteristics, and they will not give the results that you require.
Okay, you know, in the morning you drink ozonated water. Can you clean it with the ozonated water? Yeah,
I do. The machine died and I managed to fix it again and give it a few more horsepower. Yes, ozonated water is very good for cleaning. That is another thing you can use, yes.
Okay. So how do you know when the slides needs to be changed?
Well, a visual inspection normally tells you. If they've got any scratches, of course, it's time to replace them because the shiny finish, the shiny coat that's on the slides is like a waterproofing. If there's any scratch at all on the slides, the moisture will enter where the scratch is and then dissipate throughout the interior of the slides. And so if they've got any visual scratch, they need to be replaced. You look on the sides of the slides. If there's any discoloration, then you also replace them. If the slides absorb moisture, you'll get a darkening along the edge. And so any visual inspection would give you an idea of when it's time to replace the slide. Generally, with care, I mean, I'm a little bit tight with I've been known to be tight with my money. Okay, that's why we make everything so cheap that we sell. So it's got a positive spin as well. But I like to think that the slides will last indefinitely. So if you make sure they're carefully cleaned after every use, that's important. Don't leave it before cleaning them because the biological sample will dry. And it's going to be harder to clean them after that. Clean it immediately after using them. If you do that, and you're very, very careful not to put anything along the edges, there's no reason why they wouldn't last indefinitely. You know, we're not making money from them. We want them to last a long time. But it's if you're using the slides for someone else, you don't want to mix the slides with a different person. You want to keep one slide for one person for hygiene's sake. And maybe if I used it for, I'm not sure, maybe if I used it for blood samples or certainly for fecal samples, I think I'd only use it once. I mean, the slides aren't expensive and it's pretty yucky to clean some tissue matter. And so it's really just a personal preference. If you're okay with that and you can wear gloves and get it nice and clean afterwards, that's good. Yeah, that's me. Yeah.
Okay. While we do sample digitizer scan, can we also keep the other generators, treatment generators running?
I guess you're talking about spooky remotes. Are you remote treatments?
Yes.
Well, you can do. Some people say you can. I don't think it's good to leave them running because any sort of signals that are taking place are going to interact with the signals being sent by generator regs, even remote signals. And because it's simple to pause the generator, just pause the remotes which are running programs on yourself before you do a biofeedback scan, and then resume them afterwards. There's instructions in the user's guide how to pause and then resume. It's very simple. And that would be my advice. You can do it, but when you're doing a biofeedback scan, you really want to have as pristine results as possible. And to have pure results, you really need to remove any other signal sources. And so my advice would be to pause your speaker remotes until the biofeedback is finished.
Okay. John, you have just mentioned that the idea of sample digitizer is from an experiment, a story.
Yes.
And also there are two presets that has the name of experimental.
Yes.
Is the word of experimental. So it sounds like the whole thing is experimental. Has any laboratory verified that sample digitizer actually works?
Well, yes, it has been studied formally. We haven't released the papers, but the Biological Institute of National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine did tests using Spooky Sample Digitizer. They wanted to verify both the frequencies that it was detecting and also the functionality of Spooky Remote. It was a double whammy. Now, they did a 1 hour test running Spooky Remote on cancer tissues using frequencies derived from Sample Digitizer. They also had a sample. Of course they had a sample. They also had a, what's it called? A control group of cells, which was sent random frequencies. And after 1 hour, there was a 31% cancer cell reduction, a viable reduction of 31%. In the treated sample, and there's no influence observed on the control sample. The control sample saw no change. In another test, this was a 2 hour test using, again, frequencies derived using Spooky Digitizer, a 50% reduction in cancer cells was observed, and there was a minimal influence on the control group. And so there was a small change in the number of viable cells in the control, but a big 50% reduction in the cancer cell count, which was great news for us because it proved that A, remotes work, and B, Spooky Digitizer rocks. Yeah, so that's good.
Yeah, that's really fantastic. We just got a message from Paulette Stinson saying that I'm here. We love our Spooky2. My husband has cancer. We use the digitizer.
Yes.
So do you have any suggestion?
It depends where the cancer is, Paulette. And Paulette, thanks for coming back. I love it when you're on board. It depends where the cancer is. If the cancer's in the throat or the neck area, then you want to get some sort of phlegm that's up. If you do have a biopsy, then insist on a small part of the biopsy, keep it fresh, bring it home. If the biopsy is a solid matter, which it normally is, you can place it in some distilled water for a period of time, shake it, and then do the biofeedback on the water itself, because the plates have to be touching. And if it's a solid piece of tissue, then you can't do that, because the plates will be pushed apart with the tissue. And so the very best results is biopsy sample. But of course, for people that are at home using Spooky, you can't tell surgeons, we need to have a sample of this so I can run it on my Spooky kit, because they're going to laugh at you and try and, well, they just refuse to give you something. So find some way you can to get a sample. That's the very best way. But apart from that, you can, if you're using digitizer, you'd want to go as close, some fluids that are passing through the tumour site. It might be a lymphatic fluid sample you can get if it's near a surface, if it's a surface type of cancer. If it's a skin cancer, you can use a skin sample. It's quite simple, actually. And you can use that with water to get it into a liquid. I don't know, maybe you can blend it. What a thought. It's really just using ingenuity, but you want to get, the ideal is the cancerous tissue itself, because there you can measure the characteristics of the tissue and apply the frequencies directly. Yeah, I should have brought some water. I didn't think I'd be talking for so long. Or some other body sample that's near the cancerous site. Yeah.
Okay. From Misty Russian, have you had any personal observation of using this technology with someone diagnosed with
sclerosis?
No, this one.
Oh, scleroderma.
Oh.
No, I don't. I think it's a skin condition. No, I haven't had any personal experience. You've got to remember, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a person that gets ideas, and other people give me ideas as well, and I try and make them into something that everyone can use rather than just something that research laboratories have. So I haven't had the personal experience.
They can actually, if for any of our users, if you want to do some research about a certain diseases, you can go to either spooky2support.com or go to spooky2-more.com. There's a diseases directory under the navigation of resources, and you can type in the keyword of the diseases, and you can find a lot of the suggestions for treating these diseases. That has been collected from many resources like Spooky2 forum, Spooky2 Facebook group, and some other places. So it's a very good place for you to go to find the suggestions.
From the very beginning, Spooky's been about taking control. It's our slogan or motto, whatever. Take control from the very beginning. And part of taking control is education. And this is why we put efforts into these video broadcasts, these Q&A sessions, so we can empower people with the tools that they require so they can get well. And it's knowledge. Knowledge is power. When you know how to do something, then you can do it. And so there's also spooky2reviews.com,
yes,
which is another site which I quite like, which you can do a search on conditions, and people have treated other conditions similar to yours. And you can read how they've treated themselves and apply the same methods.
Yes, normally it has the original link of the review. So you can even go to the original link, because there would be discussions, people ask questions, and the person who shared their experience would answer the questions. So there will be a lot of useful information if you go there. From Tony Hartman, how many times can the plates be used? or when do we see that they cannot be used anymore? I think that question has been answered.
It has, Tony. Just if you're English, they'll last. You use them for you use them until they're dust. Use them until they become visually damaged, or you can see the moisture has gone inside them. And so, really, there's no reason why they wouldn't last for an extremely long time. But yeah, just use them until they drop.
Okay, another question from Tony. Why does the BFB start at a frequency of 5,000 hertz and not below?
The biofeedback starts at 5,000 hertz because the sample digitizer is forming a capacitor. A capacitor will only pass frequencies above a certain value. And so that value is deemed to be the lowest value that Spooky Digitizer will pass successfully. Now, having made that decision and set that as the baseline, some people have set the frequency manually down below that, and they've got away with it. So good on them, you know. But we've just set that value as the minimum for our generalized biofeedback scan. Most pathogens have response in the very high frequency range. And so the smaller frequencies won't give a good response. But some people have found that it does, so they've changed it.
Okay. A third question from Tony. Tony, I think this question has been answered, whether a boost can be used. This question has been answered, so you can go back to the, you can watch the whole video. One question from Judy. Judy is our admin in Spooky2 Facebook group.
Judy.
Hi, Judy. For the 4.5 hour preset, what is maximum DNA? What is the maximum DNA is good? I thought 8 hours. Has that changed for blood or?
Oh, I see. No, this is actually a good question that you're asking.
Do you want to repeat this question?
Sure. Well, the question is really asking how long is a sample viable for? How long can it be used until you've got to bin it? Well, we generally say 7 or 8 hours, but it really depends where you live and how warm it is. If it's very hot, then the sample may naturally degrade quickly. Or if you're living in a fairly cool climate, like China's becoming at a very fast rate of knots, then the sample would last for longer. For the tests which were done in the Academy of Sciences in Ukraine, they used an incubator with a controlled environment, controlled humidity, controlled temperature, because they wanted the results as stable as possible. But of course, we haven't got this at home, or most of us don't anyway. So generally, the samples would last for about 7 or 8 hours. So it's okay for the 4.5 hour biofeedback scan. If it's a blood sample, sometimes I really should remember to bring the water. Blood can dry, you see, and so once the plates are together, it will stop the blood from drying between the plates, but it will dry around the edges. And so we still say, 4.5 hours should be okay for a scan. But you wouldn't want to wait too long before starting that long scan, because you want the sample to be as fresh as possible.
Okay, the last question from Elizabeth Garcia Dominic. I think this question is about the 2 Chinese traditional medicine we talked about, the acupuncture and what is the other one? Wow.
This one here.
Yes.
We'll just point at it. This one.
Yes.
Yeah. Moxie something.
Moxibustion.
That's right.
Yeah. What also help with ringing in ears?
Tinnitus. Yeah.
Tinnitus.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I think this too helps the qi and the blood flow, and also yin and yang balance. So it really depends on the cause of the tinnitus, because there are many different causes for tinnitus. And actually, tinnitus is one of the things that has the most possible causes. So you need to find out the causes for this. And
That's right. It can be blood pressure. It can be nerve damage.
yeah.
Actually, a SAMA, which I held last time, it was 74, losing track now. But SAMA, of course, is Spooky2 Ask Me Anything. And it's a weekly program. And last week's program, we talked about tinnitus and how it can be overcome just with your mind. I won't give it away because then you won't watch the video. But it's actually quite interesting, not just tinnitus, but other conditions as well, where I'd say, or the expert was saying, most issues can be resolved by a state of mind.
Yeah, in Chinese traditional medicine, our doctors say that most diseases develop because of a blockage in our body. So when the blockage is open, most of the problems will disappear. So I think these two things helps unblock, and maybe it will help, but I'm not quite sure. I might need to check with our doctors.
Yeah, we are not doctors. Yeah. We don't pretend to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was thinking it is more a nerve damage. But if I'm just talking about the Chinese medicine viewpoint, it's not expensive. Like this thing here is not expensive, is it?
On the less than 100 RMB, I think.
So it's something like $50.
20.
I said something like you got the terrorist ad on that, don't you? But there'll be ones local in America too. But they're not expensive, and once you have it, that you have it for life. So yes, it might be a good investment to buy. And also, I'd actually encourage people to broaden their knowledge base and learn other ways. There's more to life than Western methods, and so you can keep popping those pills, or you can expand your knowledge and apply that knowledge to self-heal. And Echo's talking about qi flow. Well, you can get a book out of the library or buy a book about it teaches you about what is qi flow. And when you learn something, it's hard to unlearn it. So you're carrying that knowledge, that information, and you can apply that information both to yourself and to your loved ones. Yeah.
Okay. I guess time flies, and
time flies.
That's all for today.
This is our 20-minute Q&A. It's been an hour.
Okay. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and we look forward to meeting you next week. Bye.
Thanks everyone for watching. Bye-bye.